There is something happening in the stock market that most people are not aware of. Now, there are opportunities to become or make generational wealth. You see, it's only the institutional investors that are taking advantage of it, while the retail traders are just there being distracted by noise and fears. Now, that's why we are here, to show you these stocks that will be worth trillions of dollars in few days from now because of the US-Iran war. Now, we are not emotionless. No, we are not heartless. We are just traders. We sympathize with everybody that has been affected by the war, but we are traders and we are investors, and we should think like investors. So welcome to Clockwise today. My name is Providence, and we'll be discussing stocks that will be worth trillions of dollars in few days from now, and how you can take advantage of it and change the entire of your generational wealth, or restructure your wealth to another dimension. As usual, I'm here with my guests, somebody that does a lot of analysis, that sleeps on the chart. He does not just follow the news, he sleeps on the chart, he stays on the chart. He's an analyst and he's a researcher. Please, with a resounding virtual round of applause, please welcome Mr. Ekanem. Welcome again to Clockwise.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you.
How is the markets?
Well, the market is... The word is volatility.
Okay.
The volatility is off the charts. So, which is one of the things I've been saying since we started this particular series.
Yeah.
I've been talking about risk management. There's nothing as important as risk management now. Volatility has been so much. Look at the S&P 500. It's only 0.2% year to date. For context, this is a market that had gone, this is an index that had gone as much as 5%.
Okay.
And it's back. So it's just volatile. You look at the volatility index, the VIX, it's off the charts now. So volatility is the name of the game.
So because of the war. Majorly because of the war.
Majorly because of the war, because investors are not certain about what the outcome of this is. You can only try to make predictions. Nobody can be very sure. There are different consequences if this war ends today, if it drags on for the next couple of weeks. Today is day 7th of the war. If it drags on, if it goes, like months, even though predictions are based on the fact that the firepower of the Iranian regime has dwindled. I think it's down 86% compared to when they started.
Okay.
So if you look at some of those predictions, you know that it might not last for so long.
Okay.
Donald Trump has already called them to surrender, and then he also wants to be personally involved in the choosing of a new Iranian leader. So there is some kind of a glimmer of hope, but at this point, to your question, at this point, volatility is still the name of the game.
Now, you see, war has happened before. This is a process that keeps recycling, keep coming back again. We've seen different wars. We've seen different wars and their effects on the stock markets. Now, I'd like to ask you as an analyst, what sectors are actually benefiting from this particular situation?
It's very obvious. So, you can look at the charts. You're talking about defense contractors, you're talking about Lockheed Martin. You're talking about an area that people really don't look at, cybersecurity. If you look at CrowdStrike, if you look at Palo Alto Networks, those charts for the past 6 days have been printing greens. Because it's obvious that almost all of these things have a cybersecurity component to it.
Yes.
So that's why you expect cybersecurity stocks to continue to grow. When Iran runs out of physical drones, missiles, and all of those, guess what they will resort to? They resort to cyber attacks, they resort to sleeper cells, and those other divisive strategies. So that's why you want to look at those stocks. Because today, as I speak, today being Friday, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, is even having a meeting with defense contractors. Because, the US wants to be sure that they are in good shape to continue to prosecute this war as long as it takes. So you could, when you look at defense contractors, you can also look at cybersecurity firms
Okay.
as some of the biggest beneficiaries of this.
Oil.
Apart from cybersecurity, apart from security, that's so defense contractors. We call them military industrial complexes. So you talk about defense contractors, you talk about cybersecurity companies, then you also talk about oil companies too. Or the oil industry. You asked me to mention the sectors. The oil industry is also a very big beneficiary.
What are the solid minerals? Like gold?
Gold is because of the fact that investors want to run to assets that provide some kind of hedge.
Safety.
But if you observe something, I don't want it to be so blindsided. If you look at the charts, what do you notice? You notice that gold rallied, but has been ranging. And the reason why is ranging now is because when wars like this start, especially when it's a US-Iran war, one of the things that happens is that the price of oil, because of one of the things we're going to talk about later, the Strait of Hormuz is essentially on lockdown. Not because of any attack, but because the insurance companies say they are not going to cover any movement through that Strait of Hormuz. And this is where you have 20% of the world supply of petroleum. So if that happens, or as that has happened, what you notice is that very specifically, you have that most of that disruption causes a very serious hike in the price of oil. So we are looking at oil getting as far as over $100. It's almost nudging, somewhere around $84 now. So it's nudging. Even the Brent, both Brent and the West Texas Intermediate, the WTI, they're still nudging upwards. By the way, the WTI is what the US produces. Okay. When you hear Donald Trump says, drill, baby, drills, that's the WTI. But even the WTI is still nudging upwards because it also is affected by by what happens in the global oil market. So who are the people that will benefit? You are looking at oil companies. So the oil and gas industry is going to benefit very, very seriously.
I also feel, since it's a geopolitical conflict, now the greatest beneficiary when it comes to the regions, I feel America will be the greatest beneficiary to China.
If you say, that's why, if you say industries, if you say economic sector, that's what I was mentioning. But when you talk about countries that will benefit, I mean, you know that there are some things you have to look at. Venezuela is holds the world's largest proven reserve of oil. Now that has been shut out. China can't have access to Venezuelan oil because of the presence of the US. Now, Iran, remember when you shut the Strait of Hormuz, Iran is also shutting itself in the foot because it can't also use ships cannot take Iranian oil through the Strait of Hormuz elsewhere. Because insurance companies, the reality is that you cannot move billions of dollars of worth of assets across a particular area when it is under, it's very serious risk. So Iran themselves, by the way, China, before now, China used to buy literally 100% of Iranian oil. And they bought it cheap because the United States imposed a sanction on Iran. So what that means is Iran has to sell at a bargain, just like what happened when the US imposed sanction on Russian oil. So China had to be buying at the bargain. So China gets very cheap oil, not just cheap oil. China gets other cheap materials from these countries. So, but especially the Gulf states, but when you have what you have at the Strait of Hormuz now, the lockdown, what the effect that has is that China itself cannot have access to these cheap materials they've been using. China cannot deal with $150 barrel per barrel price of crude. They cannot deal with that. So what that means is that China itself will suffer. But for the US is the world's largest exporter of oil. The US is literally self-sufficient in oil. The only thing I must say is that anything that happens in the global oil market will have a trickle-down effect to the gas price at the pumps. So gas price at the pumps would also have a very serious impact on inflation in the US, and might cause the Fed to go on overdrive just to be able to tame inflation. Then, but around the world, a higher gas price is a potential cause of inflation. And indeed a potential cause of recession. Here is why. Because most of the industrial complexes, in fact, whether it is transport, air transport, whether it is land transport, whether it's cargo, whether it is trucking, cargo handling, trucking, you name it, they all rely on petroleum resources. So when that happens, and then that's on the supply side, then on the demand side, you have inflation is high, so people cannot spend money. People are literally paying more at the pumps, so they have less for discretionary spending. You have the purchasing power does what? Dwindles. Guess what happens? When that happens, then companies are not able to make profit. Inventories begin to pile up. When those pile up, companies will do what? Lay off people. And then the people that are laid off cannot afford. So the purchasing power continues to dwindle and companies continue to lay off. That cycle is a very classical, a textbook recipe for a global recession.
Okay. All right. Now, we've looked at the greatest beneficiary, those that are benefiting currently. Now, let's look at the worst hits, the sectors that are worst hits now currently. Okay.
So you can always tell that one of the sectors was hit in this case. Number one, financials.
The banks?
Yeah, the banks. And here is the reason why. You know that most of these banks make a ton of money from oil sales.
Okay.
Now, as I speak with you, 150 ships are actually just staying off the sidelines, can't move through the Strait of Hormuz. So when these ships are staying there, that's an insane amount of money lost every day. Just so you know, let's do some numbers so you understand what I mean. The Strait of Hormuz does about 20 million barrels. 21 million barrels, which is about probably 20% of global supply. Okay, 21 million barrels. Multiply that by the cost of Brent. Brent is around 84, but let's even use 80 for convenience sake. 80 times 20 is 160. So we are looking at 168. So for 21. Now 168, which is literally 1.68 billion. That's what every single day that Strait of Hormuz remains locked down, you are literally losing that kind of traffic. Yes, that's the value that passes through that place. 1.2 billion. Banks are a major beneficiary in this regard.
So they are the worst hits.
Yes, that's number one. Number two, you have, surprisingly though, tech.
Why?
And the reason is very simple. What supports tech? Transnational travel. Yes. Things have to move. Whatever, if the US produces something, it has to move. They can't consume it.
Okay.
If something is produced in China, it has to move. So when a very strategic waterway like the Strait of Hormuz, and it's not just Strait of Hormuz. Now, if you look at what China is doing, they are even attacking many of the Gulf states. So tech somehow is suffering because tech relies on movement, especially hardware. It relies on. That's why you see what's happening in Korea. Korea's stock market is falling big time because Korea is heavily invested in the US tech sector. That's number. Then the other one is airlines. Dubai, if you go to Dubai, you know that Dubai is one of the biggest hubs in the world. If you go to Dubai, look at arrival section. There is like a ghost. It's like a ghost yard. 2 days ago, Dubai literally shut down both incoming and inbound and outbound flights. If you understand how strategic the UAE is, it is like what I can call where connecting flights. You want to go to the Middle East, somehow you have to land in Dubai.
Yeah.
So, but with the missile attacks, in fact, the Iran has even extended it to Azerbaijan, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, you name it.
Yeah, UAE.
So air travel, you can't be traveling when missiles are in the air.
So air stocks are badly affected.
So airline stocks are equally affected. Financials are affected. Tech stocks are affected. But again, like they say, you want to buy when the cannons are sounding. You want to buy when the missile is in the air. This also provide opportunity. If you look at tech stock on the chart, they are very similar. You know, tech stock had already been beaten down because of the AI fears. That, I mean, a lot of things will be automated and all of that. Now you have this coming in. So the chart, you can see from here that for me, it provides a generational opportunity for someone to allocate to these sectors. So these sectors are very seriously beaten down. You know, insurance too, because when you have wars, there is a lot of. So insurance also ties into financials.
Yes, okay.
So under financials, I talked about banking, for example, then insurance now. Because insurance, these companies need to continue to provide. When you cannot provide those services, then, I mean, it also affects your bottom line.
And buying those stocks now, buying such stocks now, those stocks that are affected, is it a strategy?
Yes, for me, it provides a broad opportunity. Because this is a dislocation. It doesn't match with the fundamentals.
To come and smoothen out.
Yes, so it will smoothen out.
Okay.
And most times, from experience, you realize that these uprising, all of these conflicts, they don't last for a long time. Even if they last, investors pricing. I'm using an example of the Russian-Ukraine invasion. Investors price this in ahead of time. That's why they say, when the cannon is sounding, you buy it. Because for the most part, when people realize that it's a nothing burger, you see investors coming back into the market too. Look at what even the tech stock I'm telling you, it started moving back up. And even it started moving back up. Equal weight index is back above, it's now about between 4 and 5% year to date. So the people are now coming back into the tech space, into the tech sector, investing heavily into the tech sector. And by the way, if you ask me, they are literally investing more of like blindly, like Dr. Miller would say, invest and then investigate. So the reality is these sectors provide an opportunity for a smart investor to take advantage of. But like I said, especially if you are investing in using leverage, you have to be very careful about risk management. Okay. And another thing is don't go all in.
Okay.
You know, you think you are trying to get the bottom.
And investigate.
Yes. So because what I'm looking at is whenever I'm trying to make a decision, or is this the bottom? I'm not trying to time the bottom, by the way. Like I told you, time in the market will always beat time in the market. But sometimes you could make some kind of a smart guess when I believe that we are close to the bottom. But one of the things that will mark for me will be like, okay, I think we've just hit it. Would be, I'm looking at the VIX. A VIX spike above 40, would yield what I can call the bottom. Now, so because we don't know the bottom, what is advised is dollar cost averaging.
Yes.
Dollar cost averaging, especially into these sectors that have been beaten down. But again, don't YOLO into these sectors so much because like energy sector is like going bonkers now. But remember, it's going bonkers because the Strait of Hormuz is on lockdown.
So it's open today.
What if it's open, then you might have a serious correction in those names.
Yes.
So you want to also be careful on you might want to do maybe short-term positioning, but if you're looking long-term, I want you to look beyond the war that we have currently.
Okay. All right, now let's look at those sectors that are actually making it, and anybody can actually invest in them. Those sectors that are booming now, you can say this is their season. If they're actually a football match, this is their season. They are top 4 or they are top 5. So let's hear the top 5 industry or the top 5 stocks that can actually create generational wealth currently.
Number 1, you want to
minding that we are not emotionless. We are not analysts. We are just investors.
Yes, that's true.
All right.
So the first one you will look at defense stocks.
Like which company?
You're looking at Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin manufactures some of the most sophisticated weapons.
Okay.
Weapon systems. And I had told you there's a meeting going on today. Yeah, so that means
more weapons
are going to be coming.
Yeah.
Now, I want you to also look at something else. You saw B2, Tomahawks, and all of those very dangerous weapons. For me, it was like a demo. You know, countries will be looking at this and say, okay, so maybe which of these can I pick up? So that's represent like hundreds of billions of dollars in future demand or future sales opportunity. Good. That's number one. The other thing is you're looking at cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, already from the chart, if you look at the chart, you'll agree with me that cybersecurity has been doing very well. So cybersecurity, for that, you'll be looking at like the likes of CrowdStrike.
Okay.
You're looking at the likes of Palo Alto Network.
Okay.
Yes. Those two are going to be. Palo Alto Network is the largest cybersecurity. CrowdStrike is also a very big one. Have the best, about the best EDR solution in the market. So that's why those two names are very, very big. Now, you're also looking at, so cybersecurity is the second. So you're talking about number one, defense stocks. We talked about Lockheed Martin. Then we talk about cybersecurity. For that, we talk about CrowdStrike. We talk about Palo Alto Networks. Then you also look at AI, especially AI that enables military, coordinate intelligence coordination. For example, you're looking at Palantir. Okay. Palantir, very good. In fact, the military is literally using it to coordinate strikes, to get intelligence, to pull data together and make the right decisions when it comes to.
So Palantir does what there?
Palantir, it's an AI company. It's an AI company. Palantir, even before this war, Palantir was one of the wonders of the stock market.
Okay.
That stock made a lot of millionaires then. A lot of millionaires. This stock actually rallied over 100%. It made a lot of millionaires. And in fact, there was a time, as at last year, when you talk about, if you name even 3 stocks, you can't complete that list without mentioning Palantir. So Palantir today, Palantir still comes in because it's very relevant at this time. So I've mentioned 3 sectors. Then of course, the next one that benefits is the oil and gas sector. Okay. It benefits insane. It's an insane performance for the oil and gas sector because as oil goes up, their margins expand. So you're looking at, if you're in the US, if you look at the US stock market, you're looking at ConocoPhillips, you're looking at ExxonMobil, you're looking at Chevron. In Nigeria, for example, you'll be looking at Seplat. You could be looking at, you'll be looking at Seplat essentially. So that's it. Total is also there. Those companies are really making.
If Dangote had started, Dangote would have been there.
Of course, Dangote would have been there. Dangote would have been there. Yeah. Not essentially. Refineries will benefit though, but like I told you about Dangote will be buying at international prices, but it has a limit to which it can push prices. So there might be some margin compression. Okay. So that's why you are looking at oil prospecting companies, because the cost of prospecting did not just suddenly increase. The cost of drilling did not just suddenly increase, but the cost of the market has increased. So that broadens their margin. But when you talk about refineries, you're looking at the cost of buying the crude itself is increasing. Unfortunately, the market they are saving, like Dangote is saving a market that there's a ceiling to which you can raise price. Already from 860, you can now see that it's now selling at 1,000 naira. Yeah. Okay, good. So you can already see the impact that it's having on gas prices. So what that tells you is that the margins for these refineries might be contracting. So it might not be such. What applies to like Seplat might not apply to Dangote. So you don't look at it from the same lens.
Okay.
So the fourth one is like I mentioned, is the oil and gas that benefits exceptionally from there. Then the fifth sector that benefits so much from this, what you have here is, you will not agree with me, you might not agree with me, is telecoms. Communications. Let me tell you why. When price is high at the terminal, guess what happens? When the price is high at the pump, guess what happens? People travel less. If they travel less, they they make more calls, they make more video calls, they make more. That means all of this need data. And guess who benefits from that? The mobile network operators.
Yeah.
So you have mobile network that stand to gain in a huge in outside. They start to make outside gains in the event that this drags on for a long time.
But MTN is still going on.
MTN is still making it. Airtel is now even making it. Look at the kind of numbers the report they had, the numbers they released last year was insane. So these are the 5 areas that I know will make a ton that stand to gain from a sustained operation, aggression in Iran. But I also must mention that while you are looking at these sectors, you also want to understand that some of these things might be short-lived. If this war ends today, some of the price of oil might come down. Let me speak a little bit as a trader. So look at technical analysis. If you look at technical, there's a very serious CME gap. CME gap, I don't want to bore the audience, but CME gap is a particular gap between a particular close and an opening. So, for example, if the market, let's say Brent closed, the last traded price closed, let's say at $76, or let's say $67, for example. Then, because of the war, a lot of things happened, and then the next trading day, the market opens at, let's say from 67, it opens at 76, dollars, because of what has happened over the weekend or within the closing hours of the CME. That's the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. That gap is, let me use the word, it's a serious drawdown for some players. So there's always a push to close that gap within days, sometimes weeks. So what that tells you is that if you understand options, you know why that this applies. So if things normalize, the market would most likely want to close out that CME gap.
Okay.
So that is the reason why you don't want to be so focused on, especially if you are in a long position, you stack all your value into that particular position, because there's a chance that the market might pull back to close out those CME gaps.
Like you said, dollar cost average is still the best.
Dollar cost averaging is still the best thing you should look at. And remember, guys, that when oil price goes up, guess what happens to the US dollar? The dollar strengthens. That's why even in Nigeria, in Naira, just last week, Naira was trading at 1,336 Naira. As I speak with you guys, that yesterday, close of the market, Naira was trading at 1,408 Naira in the parallel market. So what does that tell you? It tells you that that's not technically because the Naira has gone down. It's because the dollar has appreciated. If you look at the dollar index, you see that dollar index is literally close to 100 now. So that is what you should keep in mind. If the dollar, remember, whatever asset you're buying, whether you are in the forex market, whether you're buying, remember, it's a war against the US. It's always priced against the US dollar. So when the US dollar appreciates, there's a very high chance that those assets will do what? Relative to the US dollar will depreciate. So you want to be very moderate about position sizing, especially if you are doing leverage trading. If you're investing, you also want to know that we might not be at the bottom yet. So the dollar might, if this prices on and oil price cross $100, you might see more bargain prices down the road.
Okay. All right. Now, you've listed a lot of companies in different industries.
Mm.
Now, I want you to speak to me as a trader, like you, your personal analysis. I want to invest in these industries.
Mm.
Now, I want you to mention one company each, 5 of them, one company each you invest in. You, that's your personal, what you want to do personal, your portfolio.
Mm. So this morning I looked at CrowdStrike.
These are investment advice, actually.
It's not investment advice.
Yours.
Yeah. So this morning I looked at CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike. It might not be like a one-word answer,
Okay.
but CrowdStrike has been for the past 5 days. It's been printing green. Any correction in CrowdStrike, I might go in.
Okay, waiting for correction.
So any correction, just looking for some correction to be able to get in. That's number one. I'm looking at Lockheed Martin.
Okay.
Lockheed Martin had a view. It's trading around 665 or 655 currently. So I'm expecting some slight correction. If it corrects to let's say about the high 50s, 500s, I might look at making an allocation to it. That's the two. Then the other one is, of course, Palantir. I'm still having exposure to Palantir. It's one of the best performing assets in the portfolio. We're looking at also maybe getting some position in Palantir. Lockheed Martin, Palantir. Then I'm also looking at the Nigerian market. Seplat. We could be looking at Seplat. Could be looking at also. There's been some pullback in the NGX. We could be looking at getting back in on that. We could also be looking at financials. We could be looking at financials. Financials have been very seriously beaten down.
Want to look at MTN?
We already have a position in MTN. So MTN has been doing well. A correction in MTN will be a buying opportunity for me. Then I'm also looking at
to buy more
tech stock. Yeah, I'm looking at tech stocks. I'm looking at the likes of the hyperscalers. Most of these hyperscalers, you're talking about the likes of Alphabet. You're talking about the likes of Amazon. You're talking about the likes of. that AWS, one of their data centers was attacked by Iran. So. Of course, there was a contraction in the stock price. So I'm looking at some of those names, hyperscalers, because in the world where we are literally moving into AI, you can see the debacle, the Defense Department and Anthropic debacle shows how increasingly important AI will be to whether it's war, whether any form of aggression whatsoever. AI is literally taking over. So I'm looking at some of those hyperscalers. I'm also looking at some of the Mark 7, the S&P 500 equal weighted index. I might be looking at that, though it's currently it's about up 4%. The S&P 500 is just 0.2%. So I'm thinking that, we are literally flat on the year. So maybe I could be looking at also allocating to it too. We expect this year to be a bull year. So it's like literally we have eroded any gains that we made since January. This is already March. We've eroded any gains, meaning that investing now is literally like investing on January 1st, or maybe just a little bit below. So I will be looking at that. So I was monitoring the software stocks. So I could be looking at Meta too. If you look at, I will be looking at Meta. I think Meta has really suffered. It's one of the most undervalued names. Then I'll be looking at, crypto. Why am I looking at crypto? I think that crypto has been seriously beaten down. It's been seriously beaten down. I already have some allocation to treasury companies. So for my approach to crypto, it's not just buying the asset itself. It's kind of tripartite. Number one, buying the asset itself. Number two, buying treasury companies. I still believe that treasury companies is a good play. Though MicroStrategy has been suffering, BMNR has been suffering, but I still think I still think that if we believe that the future of this of everything is actually tokenization, and Larry Fink has been there, the CEO or the president and CEO of BlackRock. Larry Fink has been saying it over and over again that the future of the stock market, the future literally of everything is tokenization. So you will have even real estate tokenization, tokenized versions of assets. So for example, let's say you have this house, it's about 200 million. This house is technically illiquid, and the reason is because you cannot sell this house. You need someone that has 200 million and is willing to buy this house. So the house is almost an illiquid asset.
Okay.
Good. But watch this. Imagine if we break that 200 million into tiny pieces. Let's say we have, instead of having 2 million, 200 million, you have about, let's say, 200 million is 200,000, Abi? Okay. So why don't we do, it's also, if you do 1 million tokens of this house, that will be 200 naira per token, Abi? Good. So it is easier for just about anybody to gain access to have ownership, partial ownership of this house.
Tokenization is the future.
So tokenization is the future. If tokenization is the future, then you want to invest in the rails that tokenization is good. If you look at, like currently, the US dollar is being tokenized into what we call stable coins, and much of it is running on the Ethereum blockchain.
Okay.
That's why I believe that Ethereum blockchain, Ethereum is going to be very big. And if you believe in Ethereum of the future, then you also look at BMR.
All right. Okay. All right. Now, I'd like us to come back to this conversation in a few weeks from now. I'd like us to come back to it again. Fortunately, we could not come back to the previous one we did about the 5 stocks. And if you could see, we mentioned MTN and the rest, and they are doing very greatly. I'd like us to come back to this conversation again to reanalyze what we are trying to say. So, list 5 stocks that we should come back and look at. Again, just 5 stocks. Now, just 5 stocks. 5 companies, 5 stocks, just 5. Not the sector, just list them. I'll come back again to look at it again.
Number 1, I'll look at CrowdStrike.
1, CrowdStrike.
Number 2, I'll look at Meta.
2.
Number 3, I'll look at Amazon.
3.
Number 4, I'll look at
Please add Nigerian stock also.
Okay. Let me add Nigerian stock. I'll look at, let me say financials. I don't want to mention a name in financials, but financials will benefit.
Okay, let's do Seplat.
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 Okay.
Then MTN.
So we'll look at Seplat
MTN.
and MTN. MTN is already on a, I always like to look at undervalued names.
You look at what? Airtel?
No, Airtel is still very good. So that's why I didn't want to even mention something in the telecoms, actually. I wanted to because those guys are doing well already. But I want to mention financials. I want to mention, there is this, I want to also mention Guinness.
Okay.
Guinness. And the reason is because I think it's a very strong, I want to mention Guinness and I want to mention Okomu. I want to see what happens this year for Okomu. And the reason is because this year particularly, we did not have much of Harmattan. So I am predicting, I'm not saying 100% sure, though, but I'm making a guess that the price of edible oil, that is palm oil, will shoot through the roof this year.
Okay.
And so the biggest beneficiary in this case is Okomu. So that's one of my projections. That's why I've been looking at Okomu very, very well.
How does the current war in Iran actually affect it?
No, it affects it because if you look at Malaysia, most of the Asian countries are being heavily affected by this war. If you look at the Asian stock market, it's down. And the reason is because of restricted movement. Okay. You can tell some of the routes, like Strait of Hormuz is a very important route. So some of those routes, generally the Middle East is in a very serious turmoil now. So movement of cargo ships that are moving, down south to the west and all of that might have some disruptions. Insurance companies might decide to, as they are already doing, to hands off. So that supplies. Malaysia literally is the largest exporter of palm oil. Nigeria is supposed to be a net exporter of palm oil, but guess what? Nigeria still imports palm oil. So if that route is threatened, then that means that there will be a scramble for what we produce locally. And then these guys stand to benefit a lot. Okomo stands to benefit because they are the biggest manufacturers of palm oil in Nigeria. They literally export. So if Okomo, if the price of palm oil shoots up, then Okomo that means an expansion to its margins. So that's how I'm really processing what happened this year. I'd already told you, if the price of oil keeps on rising, the price of petrol will keep on rising, people would rethink going anywhere. I mean, if you have to, instead of buying 1,000 naira per liter, you're now buying 1,500, 1,700. You'll trim some of the places that you go out.
Just make calls.
And make calls, use data. I mean, nowadays, with video calls, you can literally see someone and all of that. Yeah. So the people that stand to benefit, MTN, Airtel, and some of the telecom services, not just telecoms though, but even people, not the traditional telecoms providers, but even people that are doing broadband services in Nigeria would really succeed.
Okay. All right. Now, I also like our viewers or our subscribers to actually drop theirs in the comment section. Now, if you actually have stocks you're actually looking at, you can drop them on the comment section and we'll do analysis for you and actually show you the direction of which these stocks are going to. So when we come back to this video, we're going to analyze both the ones you actually predicted or the ones you've analyzed rather, and the ones you've analyzed and see the direction it's actually going to. I think it's a nice place for us to leave this conversation today. Mm-hmm. Thank you for coming again. And we'll come back to this particular video to check what your predictions are. And I know they have always been good as you're a practicing analyst. You sleep on the charts. Mm-hmm. You're always on the chart.
We try.
You're always on the chart.
We try.
You're always on the chart. Thank you for coming once again. And we'll come back again. Now, on that note, today we'll come to the end of today's episode of Clockwise. Now, do not forget to like, subscribe, and put on the notification bell on this channel so you can see us again. And also do not forget to drop your comments, drop your reactions, drop whatever you want us to analyze. And we are there for you 24/7 to do it. And also do not forget that the illiterate of the 21st century are not those who did not go to school or those who will not go to school, but are those who have refused to evolve as their environment is evolving. My name is Providence. See you again.